Welcome back to Extreme Outdoor Survival. If you're serious about real-world survival, history, and the lessons carved into the bones of past expeditions, you're in the right place. Before we dive deep, subscribe if you haven't already. This channel isn't about fantasy survival. It's about what actually keeps people alive in places where mistakes don't get second chances. Welcome back to Extreme Outdoor Survival. If you value real history, real field lessons, and the psychology that separates survivors from statistics, you're in the right place. Make sure you subscribe and share this with someone who treats wilderness seriously. What we cover here doesn't come from fantasy survival challenges. It comes from the patterns that repeat across centuries of expeditions, military campaigns, trapping routes, and lone journeys where the environment quietly sorted who was mentally prepared and who only packed gear. Here's the truth. Most people never hear. Nature usually tests your mind before it threatens your body. Very few people collapse from the first shock of cold, hunger, or fear. Instead, they lose slowly to doubt, confusion, complacency, or false confidence. The terrain doesn't need to push you off a cliff if it can first convince you to walk toward one. Today we're talking about survival mind games, how nature applies pressure without speaking, and how you can recognize and counter those psychological traps in practical, concrete ways. The first mind game is false comfort. Environments often feel friendlier than they are at the beginning. A warm afternoon in the mountains turns into sub-freezing winds at dusk. A short explore without the pack becomes an unplanned night out. This is how many historical tragedies begin. The day starts easy. The test is whether you plan for conditions as they will be, not as they currently are. The practical counter is boring but powerful. Act as though you will be forced to stay overnight every time you leave camp, even if you expect to return in an hour. Carry fire-starting capability, insulation, and water treatment as baseline, not trip extras. Nature's mind game says this is just a quick walk. Survival thinking answers yes, and it may not end that way. And that. The second mind game is panic disguised as urgency. Panic rarely looks like screaming. It often looks like rushing decisions, skipping steps, or pushing faster than you can safely navigate because the situation feels embarrassing or threatening. People who are, in a hurry to fix it, get lost farther, get wetter, and get colder. The antidote is deliberately slowing the moment everything feels rushed. A practical example is being off-trail near nightfall. The untrained brain pushes for speed. Thinking distance equals safety. The trained survivor stops, breathes, eats something, layers up, and sets a deliberate plan. That reset prevents bad choices driven by adrenaline from multiplying into full-blown emergencies. The third mind game is isolation. The wilderness does not simply surround you physically, it strips familiar noise, light, and social cues. For many people, the mind fills that silence with fear, worst-case stories, or irrational certainty that, something is watching. History shows that isolation leads to people walking at night when they should stay put, burning energy they need, or abandoning shelter because stillness feels unbearable. A practical countermeasure is structure. Give your brain tasks, gather wood, improve shelter, boil water, inventory gear. The human mind handles isolation poorly when it is passive and handles it well when focused on process. The fourth survival mind game is overconfidence, created by small successes. You start a fire easily, navigate one tricky section of terrain, or cross one cold stream. The brain misreads this as proof that everything will continue to go well. That's when risk tolerance shoots upward. Many expedition journals record this exact pattern. The counter is disciplined humility. After each success, don't ask, "What else can I push?" Ask, "What new risk did this create?" You made fire. Good. Now ask how to keep it through rain. You climbed the ridge. Good. Now ask about descent routes in darkness or fog. This is how professionals stay alive long after amateurs celebrate. The fifth mind game is, well, despair when conditions stack against you. Cold, hunger, soaked clothing, fatigue and pain do not arrive alone. They combine. The danger isn't actually the discomfort itself. The real danger is the story your mind begins to tell about it. This is hopeless. The body, can often continue long after the story claims it cannot. A historically proven method for countering despair is narrowing your time horizon. So stop thinking about tomorrow or the entire route. Just think about making fire in the next half hour, then water, then shelter, then warmth, step by step. You're not denying the seriousness of the situation. You're simply refusing to be crushed by its size. The sixth mind game is misreading nature as personal. Storms don't target you. The mountain isn't angry, the river isn't unfair, but once people slide into that emotional framing, they respond emotionally instead of strategically. Sometimes people fight the river instead of crossing correctly, or they push into whiteout conditions rather than sitting tight, all because they think, the mountain won't beat me. But honestly, survival requires removing ego from the equation completely. Now, the seventh and final mind game is the subtle erosion of discipline. Maybe you skip checking your knots, or you don't secure your food properly. Sometimes you even leave wet socks on. The environment almost never punishes these things immediately, which, well, just makes the habit worse. Then, when you least expect it, the failure compounds at the worst possible time. Countering erosion means practicing small discipline as if someone were grading you. In real expeditions, the disciplined small tasks are what carry people through storms and injuries. Examples are simple. Always dry your feet before sleep. Always gather more wood than you think you need. Always recheck navigation before committing to valleys or ridgelines. History rewards that mindset with survival. Nature doesn't need to shout. It tests patience, attention, humility, and psychological endurance first. Those who fail those early tests often never reach the physical limits of their bodies because their minds folded long before. Treat mental resilience as core survival gear, the same way you treat knives, maps, or fire starters. If this helped sharpen how you think in the field, stay with us. Subscribe to Extreme Outdoor Survival. Share this with someone serious about wilderness history and real survival practice. And keep strengthening the only tool you always carry everywhere, your mind. Grace in the journey.